So sue me, really? This happened several years ago. I was working 40 hours per week programming at my main job. But I did occasional small projects in the evenings and on weekends for other clients. At one point I was referred to a large company that runs major stadiums and event venues around the country. One of their stadiums is relatively close to where I live. I'll just call them Mark 1 for this story. The saga begins. This manager at Mark 1 said they wanted a simple administration database and user interface for employee timekeeping. Apparently the old system they had was not working for them. I got details of what they wanted and drafted a set of specifications. Told them I could write the system to the specs for $2,000 flat rate. They agreed. I immediately went to work and churned out a database and UI for the system with full documentation in about 2 weeks. So I scheduled an in-person meeting to show them. Now when I showed up at the meeting, someone representing the security department was there, and he asked about getting some additional features. Sure, I told him. I can do that. So I went back, wrote up a change request and incorporated the additional features into the platform. I scheduled another meeting with Mark 1 for a couple of days later. When I got to that meeting I noticed the audience had grown. There were 2 extra people from the finance department. Can you add feature X, feature Y and feature Z? They asked. Sure, no problem. So I left, wrote up a CR and added the features. A few days later I met with them again. Imagine my surprise when the audience size had grown, and the new attendees asked for more features. This went on for about 5 more rounds. And I was getting frustrated that I had spec'd out a 2-week project that was now taking months. And I wouldn't be paid until I delivered. And they accepted the final product. But I chugged along implementing all their change requests. But one day the Mark 1 manager called me. Apparently she had been speaking with other departments that weren't represented in her status meetings of ever-increasing mass. She gave me a list of dozens of new features they wanted, some of which would require a complete redesign of the core database and an overhaul of the UI. I had had enough. I told her, this is a complete overhaul of the original spec. I'll have to redesign and rebuild this from the ground up. Well, that's not my problem, she responded. Well, actually it is. I'm not going to design and build an entirely new system until you pay me for the current one, built to the specs we agreed on. After a short pause, she dropped a bomb on me. Well, we're not going to renegotiate. You can consider this project canceled. That's not how this works. You still have to pay me for the work I've done. No, I don't. You haven't delivered anything. Sue me. And she hung up. Cue the malicious compliance. Meet me at the courthouse. I took Mark 1 manager's advice and went to the courthouse the next day to file in small claims court to recover $2,000 from Mark1. On my court date a couple of months later, I went down to the courthouse and was greeted by an arbitrator. In my state, they have court-appointed arbitrators meet the litigants when they arrive, to see if the parties can sort out the case with an agreement to maximize the judge's time. The arbitrator asked me, is there anything you would agree to resolve this immediately? Quote, I thought about it and said, if they'll pay me 90%, $1,800. Right now I'll drop the suit. He then went into a side room where the Mark 1 manager and the corporate lawyer were hanging out. I heard her screaming that they would either pay it all or pay zero. Quote, the arbitrator came to me with the news. And I told him, I heard. And I'm happy to take it all. He laughed and said no. They want to go to trial. Fast forward a couple of hours. Fast forward is a funny phrase, considering how slow the court moved. But hey, and we're standing in front of the judge. I'm at my table alone. And the Mark 1 manager and lawyer are standing at the opposite table. The judge asked Mark I manager to tell her side first. She went into a very long speech about the project and corporate America and apple pie and thermonuclear weapons, and honestly I have no idea because I stopped listening about 28 minutes ago. She talked non-stop for at least 30 minutes. Then the judge asked me for my story. Now I wasn't maliciously ignoring Mark I manager's long-winded tale of political intrigue and patriotism. I was actually formulating a strategy. I thought to myself, the judge probably had people who liked to speechify in front of him all day, every day. I also thought he might appreciate a short and sweet story that got straight to the point and didn't waste his time. So I said, Your Honor, they agreed to pay me $2,000 to design and build a software system for them. I completed the work based on the agreed specs, and then they decided to cancel the project after I was done. That was it. Then the judge asked me, how do I know you did the work? Quote, I had printed out the specs, change requests, documentation, and source code the night before. I lifted a ream of paper, 500 pages, from my table and offered it to the bailiff. Here's the code I wrote for them, Your Honor. The bailiff came to take it from me and the judge waved him off. No need. I can see it from here. The judge then asked Mark I manager, is this true? Quote, she looked like she was in a daze. Yes. Quote, then I fined for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,000. FCKU. Pay me. About a month later, Mark I still hadn't paid. So I called the county sheriff and explained. Sent him the court judgment documents. And he said, no problem. They'll pay. The sheriff actually called me later that day. He was on a cell phone and I could hear him talking to the Mark I manager. He told her, cut a check for $2,000 right now or he was going to rip your computers out of the wall and auction them off until the judgment is satisfied. I don't know if he had that authority, but the sheriff seemed to have a grudge against Mark I, and he was reveling in the opportunity to dog them out. Apparently Mark I believed he had the authority because, long story short, the sheriff had a $2,000 check in his hand about 15 minutes later, and it was in my mailbox about a week later. Small claims is a powerful weapon in the hands of the proletariat. It's really fun when the other side engages high-powered lawyers to try to intimidate you. Been there, done that, just laughed. I'll get my cut, and you're wasting your own resources. To boot. In my judgment, this is in grade A plus MC, and the sheriff had a MC too. So this is a MC and an MC. So, this is a MC squared. Since E equals MC squared, this is a Einstein level 1100. To answer your question, yes, the sheriff has a number of methods to collect a judgment. One of them is to seize assets and then sell them at a sheriff's auction. And they add the fees and costs of collecting to the amount needed. That's why you put a number of dollars on each change request and only start working on it once the money got approved. Furthermore, only start working on the changes once the first version is done and paid. Call it version 2. That's the theory. Of course, things aren't always that easy. And if they are nice, they might get 1 or 2 changes on the house. Always write into your contracts that any changes or add-ons outside the agreed specs comes with a price tag, especially when agreeing to flat rate. I love this, but I would have loved it more if you recouped the full amount of your months of work that you seem to have given away for free when they kept changing the specs. Any contractor I've known would negotiate additional fees prior to undertaking further works. Actually, the sheriff does have that exact authority, and it's what makes them different from regular police. Either local or state, they technically work for the court. Check out the standard handout you get when you win a case in the Golden State. If they don't pay on time, you and the sheriff get to rock their world. https www.courts.ca.gov/partners/documents/collecting.pdf. They probably had the authority in the form of a writ of execution. One good example is, homeowners foreclose on Bank of America. I also have a story about, sue me. So I was starting a new job at a small family-owned business of 15. Never given a contract, and when I asked about it they gave excuses like this lady is sick blah blah blah. In my country, there's a probation period of 1 month in which both parties can opt out of the work agreement any time for any reason. After this month, there are notice periods. After 5 weeks, I get called into the office where they tell me I'm not a good fit for them and they are letting me go under the agreed upon 3 months probation, which I had never heard of. So I called my lawyer and asked for clarification. She said that 1 month probation is the legal maximum and that they owe me a lengthy notice period. So I call the owner and state that they owe me this. And she just says, no, we agreed to blah blah blah, and if you don't like it we'll see each other at court. So this is exactly what I did. I went to my lawyer, gave her all the information, and she sent out a payment request, totaling about €7,000 plus her lawyer costs. After we received no answer, we filed a claim at the labor court. 2 court dates go by, where the second one the opposing party didn't even show up. It's clear they want to drag it out and for me to rack up fees so that it's not worth it, and I push back. Little did they know I have law insurance that covers all my court and lawyer fees even if I am the one suing. At the 3rd court date, just 2 weeks ago, they come to us with a settlement proposal. €6,500 plus all court fees. My lawyer negotiated that her fees would also be included and we accepted. Judge got notified and we are now waiting for them to pay. Deadline is the end of this month. Total cost to them, around €10,000. I really wanted to thank the owner for her idea of us seeing each other at court. But I chose to be civil and was just happy I got what I wanted. Pretty sure the sheriff had that authority. I vaguely recall a story years ago about someone who sued a bank. And when the bank laughed off the judgment instead of paying it, sheriff went down, locked up the branch, and was going to start doing that until the manager realized, oopsie, and cut the check. ETA found it. Reading what the sheriff said at MARK1, it reminded me of Florida man and his case against B of A. https abcnews.go.com/business/Bank America Florida foreclosed angry homeowner BOFA/story. It equals 1377568. Next time, I recommend getting a writ of foreclosure if this happens again and do what Florida man did. Recommend that when getting the writ, ask judge to add cost of truck and 2 laborers to the judgment if you have to appear to remove the property. I have a parent who is an attorney. Very golf with the judges, and one thing I was told is in small claims showing up with an attorney annoys the judge. It's a shame you're not entitled to compensation for their late payment. The default judgment should be the amount plus 10%. Yeah, justice. Woohoo. The sheriff does have that authority, though there's usually a process involved for asset forfeiture. Yes, they can and will come in and grab things and sell them off to collect on debts owed. No personal property. The company's debts are the company's debts. They'll usually start with the computers, because those are easier to sell and usually are worth a lot more than their dollar value to the company, as they'll have assorted records and whatnot. The threat of losing them usually gets the check in hand quickly. As shown, Moral of the story. If the judge says pay up, you pay up. If you think the judge is wrong, pay up. Then file a complaint. This warms the cockles of the heart-smiling face. I thought about it and said, if they'll pay me 90%, 100% plus a fee for jerking me around, FTFY smiley face. Nice work.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.